Hey, how's everyone doing in the Galactic Family Podcast world tonight? Tonight, we have a celebration in order. A congratulations for David Brager. David Brager is a visionary author and communications architect who explores how humans and machines can interface at the neural and systematic level. See? Tongue twister. His groundbreaking work includes the Future's Toolkit, which blends tech culture insights with humor, design, and ethics. He focuses on building FCC-compliant platform for conscious human-machine interaction. We are also proud to announce that David has been officially accepted into Marquis' Who's Who, a prestigious biographical directory that has recognized accomplished leaders and professionals since 1898. The publication honors individuals who have made significant contributions in their field and remain subjects of enduring reference and interest. David's pioneering research into ethical neural interfacing system-level communication design makes him a standout in his distinguished community. So please join us as a recognition. And let's bring him on the stage. David, are you there? I think you muted on me. Nope, you're still muted. That's okay. There you go.
Did that help?
Yep, you're fine, sir.
Okay.
I also have the links to his LinkedIn and book in the description of the podcast page. Now, what sparked your journey into studying human-computer interfacing and programmable communication?
Well, in 1982, I was working on the first generation Commodore 64 prototype number 6, handwritten in green felt tip ink on what looked like an Avery label slapped on the back of what was obviously a bastardized VIC-20.
Yeah.
And on the inside, I took the 3 screws out and opened it up, and it looked like a wire-wrapped nightmare, but it worked. And I was on the phone with Jim Butterfield, who is one of the greatest Canadians I've ever dealt with. He was with the Toronto Pet Users Group, and he was a programmer who had worked on everything by Commodore, but he did not work for Commodore. He was an independent, and his opinion was his own. And I asked him, how do you do memory mapping? He said, well, you go with what you know. You poke data into a register, you peek it back out, you watch for changes in the computer, you watch for changes in the data, you take good notes, and you trust your gut. And then a year later, a U.S. Army Air Corps warrant officer supply pilot who'd bought a Commodore 64 from the family computer business wanted to learn computers, and so he made me a mentoring offer. And Charlie Brewer said, tell you what, you teach. He said, David, I've checked you out. You're a good guy.
Yeah.
Tell you what, you teach me anything I want to know about computers. I'll teach you anything I want to know about his hobby, which was hypnosis. And as soon as I started, I went, the subconscious acts just like an operating system. And so I used Jim Butterfield's memory mapping techniques, and over the next 30 some odd years, doing strictly volunteer work, because people change their lives overnight. And anything you can change your life overnight, parents should teach this stuff to their children so the good mental health goes back to the family level and the entire psychology field transforms.
Yes.
And then in 2005, in the midst of my City University of Seattle MBA in marketing studies, while baked on good high THC medical marijuana, I found a 42-point puzzle in the Gospel of Matthew that revealed tools for hypnosis and remote viewing and space-time analysis. And I went, okay, I'm a Prince of King David. The world looks like Revelations. And if you read Revelations, it says somebody from the paper had to do something. So I tackled the puzzle to see what was here. And the remote viewing tools are on the back of the US $1 bill. The founding fathers knew eventually Judaism was going to have to grow a brain. and realize that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, 3 wise men, have empty hands, and Moses never lived to see a Torah. Why are we carrying a Torah? Well, somebody had to carry a torpedo for George Burning Bush for 3,000 years. Study how a free man is enslaved by a Torah by tricking him into carrying a rule book.
Huh.
Consider 2 commands and 8 rules for every decision. Marines, do I have permission to make this next decision? Well, either lies, scapegoat, dishonor, or torture. No. So my left thumb pops up, proving I love my Marine Corps with all my heart and all my soul and all my might with this one decision right now. But now everybody around me goes, yeah, you're never going to steal, overwork, adultery, or kill. No, I'm going to go buy some toilet paper because you're scaring the shit out of me. 2 thumbs up. Next decision. ADD becomes massive multitasking. Just hit send. Obsessive compulsive disorder becomes pattern matching and chaos. This thing and that thing and that thing are all moving together. And with all this additional cranial processing, diabetes is fuel. Our species has been enslaved to the logic of some other species, and that's why ET is waiting for us to grow a brain. We've got a problem we've never considered. Logical viruses. People writing computer viruses are infected by defective logic. And I started looking at hypnosis as computational logic and standard human language by merging Commodore 64 basic beginner's all-purpose symbolic instructional code with hypnosis, and then developing tools for parents to teach their kids. And I'm at a point now where when I found the Russian book Alien Races online and went to the appendix, and in the appendix it says there are lines on your planet and suggests you follow them. And I followed them to latitude 8 south and 108 west at Google Earth and found this on the bottom of the ocean with a ratio of 4:1 on the left and 2:1 across the top, 42.
Wow.
And northwest of this is a signature, first initial dot last name in cursive over 100 miles long. If you can do fishes and loaves and raising the dead, fishes and loaves are food. Fishes and raised dead can be grown from one single cell.
Yeah.
But to do fishes and loaves and raising the dead, you'd have to have matter rearranging technology. The teleporters are already here. And they couldn't risk the good stuff to fall in the bad hands, so a trap for George Burning Bush lay on the shoulder of the village idiot. And as I'm the very last story, where's I put it over here? In the very first Darwin Awards book, Evolution in Action, page 308, clean the head. That should come up with, oh joy. Come on, there. I don't know if you see this. It's the cover of the book.
The Darwin Awards, it says.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Anyway, last story in the book, page 308, cleaning the head. I submitted it to the website, and Wendy Northcutt, who knows I'm doing this, said it was the funniest thing on the website, so I put it as the last story in the book. But if you can laugh at your mistakes in public, it's healthy.
Yeah, I agree.
And I laugh at myself all the time. But Rodney Dangerfield, when I was brainstorming for Rodney.com, gave me a bunch of really good tips. And one of them was wait for your audience. He said, you only get one chance to be new. Now, he knows this because he had 2 chances to be new. He had an entire career as Jack Roy, and that failed. And he changed the name to Rodney Dangerfield and had another career. But most people don't do that. And so he said, you get one chance to be new, polish your skills, bring work ready to roll, and never lose sight of your dreams.
All right.
Well, I was born XXY with Klinefelter syndrome. I'm the XX heir of the royal of the paper of King David, and the XY firstborn son of his bar mitzvah. And Donald Trump in the White House is saying you have to be XX or XY. And I have a birth defect. So he's discriminating against me, and I got pissed. So I'm dumping tools for hypnosis and remote viewing and space-time analysis, the open source public domain. You'll find them in the design of the Torah, the Gospel, and Holy Quran, because the paper King David stand united against the son of bitch who wrote the Torah and anyone using chaos as weaponry. And with 2 commands and 8 rules, you're free. Let my people go. My people are humankind, not Judaism. But with all the chaos and everything else going on in the world, there's nothing fun and interesting to do. And we were doing hypnosis, Dungeons and Dragons. My guests swore they were battling real monsters in real time, but as long as reality is safe, as it's instinctive by everybody on the planet to scream out, I can't believe this is happening. As long as reality is safe, it turns off the graphics of the mind to return to default mode on earth as it is in heaven. Build your treasures in heaven combined with on earth as it is in heaven, combined with the chance for rich men to get into heaven, revealed a very sophisticated trap from a super genius hanging on a cross at his request to outrun a problem to protect everybody now, so it can be a savior when the world needs a savior. So on the 18th of December 2007, when a star went supernova and a bunch of Christians in Richland, Washington at Shalom United Church of Christ in Richland went, oh, that's like the star in the Jesus story, I sent a fax to the Washington, D.C. Embassy of Greece and asked them to begin judgment again, because Anointed One and Messiah in English are Jesus and Christ in Greek. They're titles.
Okay.
And titles are like college degrees, they must be earned. But then I went online to learn it was Mount Arafat Day, which all of Islam foretold a great judgment would begin. And as it just had, I sent another fax on the 19th to the same Greek embassy in Washington, D.C., and let them know that Muhammad hit space-time dead on.
Okay.
It's been an amazing run with how brilliant all these people are that found this puzzle. Knights Templar in their logo put a two sets of crosses to let you know that there's a double cross in the future.
Yeah.
And I went, wow, that's great. Thank you, because I didn't know what was going on. And Thomas Jefferson, there's a puzzle on the front of the Declaration, not on the back, on the front. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Life, one syllable. Liberty, three syllables. Pursuit, 2, 0, 1. Happiness, 3 syllables. In 2013, a coup attempt I stopped in 2008 reemerged his ugly head, and Thomas Jefferson sent all this data on how to use the mind's eye. He's just a genius. But everybody that found this puzzle, William Shakespeare in Macbeth, people are saying, don't say that, say the Scottish play. In the Scottish play, you have the 3 witches who are sharing one eye.
Mm-hmm.
And William Shakespeare found this puzzle, and using the tools I found in the Gospels and using the template of the Holy Quran, Muhammad was born Jewish. I went looking for why are members of the family of David rising to prophet. The Torah turned out to be 2025 computer game design. It's just a game because Moses does things no human would do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, good and goddamn well. As a parent or as a leader, you set up rules that are never to be broken. You go on hiatus, you come back and find self-appointed management making your people do everything you told them not to do. Who would you side with?
Yeah.
You side with the meek. Blessed are the meek. Listen to the guy on the cross who upgraded from stoning. They were going to stone to death.
So can you explain what it means then to be a human computational communications programmer?
Well, the first thing you do is find out what your guest or whoever needs to fix whatever they want to fix in their lives.
Okay.
And surmise to say, I don't want to know what they're doing. I want them to work out their stuff in their own head. So I'll run a session, and I have this thing online that I uploaded it in 2005 in the spring. If you go to tinyurl.com/basic -1, all run together, but with the hyphens. It takes you to a script I posted online that's a merger of computer logic and hypnosis, and it fixes post-traumatic stress disorder in one session, run once.
Oh, wow.
And it's free. It's a contractual form of hypnosis. The whole thing is written up so that you print it out, you give it to somebody who's going to read it to you, and you contract to them that I'm the one doing the hypnosis. You're just reading it to me. I'm the hypnotist. I program myself. You're not programming me. A hypnotist has no power over me. I am only one doing the hypnosis.
Okay.
And
So
I take responsibility, and people who won't sign the contract, and I've had a few,
okay.
take themselves out of the equation. If they're not going to take responsibility, I don't volunteer to do the work.
Well,
And
yeah, because they had to take responsibility for their own actions that they're going to
Exactly.
do to fix their problem.
Exactly. I'm not fixing their problem. They're fixing their problem.
Yeah, you're just giving
That,
them the tools to go through it to understand their problem.
the book, which I put on your set so you could give it to everybody, in
Yep.
the appendix is written, if your guest wants to experience this, write your software for the mind like that so you can augment the basic all-in-one for whatever you need right now so you get expert results the first time you run a hypnosis session for someone using these tools.
Okay.
And that's why the book's been maintaining it. It was 5 stars the first time Scribd released it. It was 5-star the second time they came up with a judging system. They then went to 20 thumbs up and 0 thumbs down, and now it's at 100% thumbs up.
So is that why you describe the Futures Toolkit as being FCC compliant? Because you're not you are acting as the kind of therapist without actually knowing what their problem is, but trying to give them the tools that they can figure it out themselves.
Yeah, I wanted civilization as a whole to receive all these tools and be free, because
Okay.
these tools allow you to create a garbage can for garbage thoughts and go from the earliest memory to the present and systematically take things that you never want to remember. You learned everything you want from them, but you are choosing to throw them into a filing system that will put them away and they will never hurt you again. And
Okay.
I mean, I've done this there was a Vietnam veteran who was having night terrors and flashbacks and horrible, horrible shit. And we ran one session one time. And I talked to him 1 day later, 1 week later, 1 month later, 3 months later, 6 months later, and a year later, and he never had another problem.
Oh, wow.
And the thing is, the script works consistently. It goes through and has arms up and arms down signals. So if someone is reading to you in close proximity, they can see it. And otherwise, you can ask someone to tell you when they've reached the end of a section.
Okay.
I've run it over the phone or over script. Not script. It was a phone type of system. Anyway, streaming media over the internet.
Okay.
It's great. Everybody on the internet needs to learn something new that's fun and built into you and your kids and your friends and everyone you know, and doesn't cost anything. You can do hypnosis Dungeons and Dragons. People want to experience movies as if they're in the movie, and I'm doing volunteer work, so I'm not charging.
Yeah.
And we did Avalon, Avatar, The Wizard of Oz.
And these people came out with the realization that they thought that they were there.
Yeah, they were.
Oh,
They
wow.
they built everything. They took the belief systems that they had and built this reality and moved into the game. And this is better than 3D, and it's all free and it's built into you because you will believe what you believe.
True.
And if it gets too weird, you scream, "I can't believe this is happening," and it turns it off.
So how
And
do humor, poetry, and formatting become tools in engineering human cognition?
well, humor has to do with being able to cope.
Okay.
I believe a lot of people, especially comedians, use humor as a way to extrapolate their horrible realities with something that they can find funny in it so they can take themselves away from the terrors and the nightmarish stuff that is coming at us all the
Okay.
time. And the second part you said was
The second part is how do humor, poetry, and formatting become tools in engineering human cognition?
poetry has to do with understanding time and timing.
Okay.
So I wrote a rapper's waltz for someone who has been dubbed as the worst rapper in history, and that wasn't my choice, but I agreed with it. a waltz is 3/4 time, and he recorded it on a 4/4 beat. Do I need to say anything else?
No.
The contracts never came. I met him on Craigslist. He swore the contracts were coming. Contracts. I penned 11 tracks on his album. The album was published. I was never told about it. I found it online. I contacted ASCAP, and they said, if the album's been published, you can join. So I'm a member of ASCAP because of that.
Okay.
But when I saw a journalist review the album and said, you are the worst rapper and this is the worst album in history, I disagreed from the things I'd written, which were good poetry. This guy wanted long,
Yeah, drawn out.
And I wrote them, but I felt that he had no talent. He shouldn't be performing these because he wasn't rapping them. He was speaking them.
Oh, okay. I got
And
you.
it was like,
So
I'm going to take this bubble gum and stick in both ears so I don't have to listen to this.
yeah. So do you view your work as more technological, philosophical, or poetic, or is it all three?
Well, I don't take myself that seriously.
Okay.
I found that this stuff worked. And by coming up with a way where I could just send someone a module, I didn't have to rewrite the whole script because the basic all in one's already out there. I could work like a standard programmer with a module in a computer. You take the motherboard out and you take one card out and throw it away and buy another card and stick it back in. The human mind has that type of ability for memory management. And if you knew this stuff, you'd be using it. And it's fun. And you don't have to have a tape recording to listen to do it for yourself. But some people are so freaked out about their privacy that that's what they choose to do. But the way the script is written is you're going to work out this thing in your mind, and you're not going to tell me anything. And when you get to the end of a set, you raise your hand, let me know, and then I'll go to the next section. And that way, your privacy remains private, and you can then create a subset of privacy for yourself so that you choose to never remember something.
Okay.
And there was a woman who, her father used to beat her and treat her horribly for getting bad grades. And we basically, her mother divorced the man, and she, by choice, went from the earliest memory to the present and eliminated his face and his voice from her memory. It was that trivial to her that little stuff she'd learned all she ever wanted to learn from this man. She did not want to re-experience the old memories, and so she removed it. And if everybody on the planet knew how much self-control they have and had tools to utilize it, that's why I called the book The Future's Toolkit. Because nobody knew this stuff was here. The hypnosis tools in the Gospels are really, really complicated. Water into wine. Let this stimuli trigger that feeling. But the suggestion was also water into methamphetamines, water into cocaine. If everybody knew this stuff was in the Gospels, the cartels would never have wasted their time with any of the one high wonders because of this one suggestion in the Gospels. Seriously, cannabis, each strain changes, and that's why you can mix them all together and grow them in different ways. Every strain's different, and every strain affects people differently, and there's all these different dimensions of logic. And so different strains stimulate different paths through life. And I've been trying to get people to take a piece of paper and draw a line, 3 lines across and 9 down. And so you go from points, lines, planes, space, time, matter, belief system, feeling, communications, in a phase of matter and phase of ideas and phase of consciousness. and just put check boxes of what feelings you experience with a strain, so that we can build out a lexicon for people that, oh, I want to go and study for finals. Well, studying for finals is really good for a mind high, but not necessarily a body high, so that you can type and not be drawn to sitting in front of a TV and going into couch lock, which is really good zero-dimensional logic. You're not going anywhere. You may as well just stay here.
So,
Go ahead.
oh, go ahead. I was going to say, so what do you mean, though, by interfacing with humans at a neural level using contractual design?
Well, when you write a computer program for a computer, you are taking something out of your mind and creating a stream of consciousness of what you want the computer to learn. And hypnosis is just taking one level further, and you're not putting it into a computer, you're putting it into someone else's mind and asking them to process it. And you can use while loops and loop until, all the logistics we use with computers with hypnosis. I want you to go from now until from the earliest memory you can go to the present. And anytime you find a word that you don't want to remember the word as it is affecting your life, you're going to go back and relive the first time experience you ever had with that one word and change that memory to a new memory that, although by technical terms it's assumed to be fraudulent, the reality is the original memory wasn't done effectively. And so you rethink the event and make a new decision of how you would deal with that situation.
Okay.
And you change the way so that the next time you're in a first time situation, and the way the human mind functions, everything is coming at you and your mind is looking for patterns of anything you've ever experienced before. And if you've had a first time experience, you feel whatever you felt that first time, and it steers your behavior towards it or away from it.
Okay.
And if the first time you tried something, it was wonderful, but for some reason something tragic happened, so your memory is of the tragedy, and you want to be steered back to the feeling so that you want to take out that, you can edit these memories. You have that ability.
And I believe the same thing. It's like it's like I was telling people on my podcast here, a while back. I was like, this is what I believe, the brain is a CPU system, just like a computer. Your senses are actually the external components, like the mouse, keyboard, microphone, camera, that you can visualize everything. Now, they can't pick up everything because they're limited as well. So then your brain takes whatever limited information you get and tries to process that information in your brain, but it also takes external feedback as well from outside sources.
I believe that is correct.
Boom.
Einstein's special theory of relativity turned up in literature. There's a shared imagination. Because each of the writers are writing a story, they didn't realize that as they're writing, they're applying an opaque of their imagination over the framework of their ability to see through time. And so I tell people to take a piece of paper and set it in front of them in landscape format like this, and draw a line across the front closest to you, and draw two big dots at each end, and then flip it over and draw another line across the front and draw one big dot in the middle. And on the side that has the two dots on it, to your left, write the past, and to your right, write the future, and then flip it over and write my mind's eye in 6 dimensions, looking at all of history in 3 dimensions.
Okay.
And to your left on this piece of paper, put every story writer and person who's alive. If they're writing fiction, they're applying an opaque of their imagination over their framework of history. That's why I've been using the movies. Let's see, I'm using The Matrix and Harry Potter and Return of the Jedi and The Wizard of Oz and The Three Musketeers. These are 5 movies.
Okay.
And in all the movies, you have one small group of bad guys and this plethora of insane people that are traveling with them moving forward. And then you have two main characters and a third character, two nice guys and a ruffian, followed soon by a wannabe. And so you have, I should probably bring it up so I'm reading the actual text, but you find yourself with two nice guys like Obi-Wan and Yoda.
Luke. Or Yoda, yeah.
And you have Darth Vader's inner being. I don't remember the name of the character. At the end of the movie, you've got Darth Vader that's now no longer Darth Vader per se.
Yeah.
And then you have Luke. And that's a good remote view of this corridor. We've got Abraham, Elijah, Muhammad, and Aquarius. And Abraham got the 2 commandments and 8 rules from God, supposedly. And the way this thing works, to make this next decision, if I do not lie, then I respect forward in time from my avatar moving away from me. And if I do not scapegoat, while it's nice that I'm not lying about other people, the greater lesson is to learn from every mistake I can find backward in time. So forward in time and backward in time, but just for me alone. If I do not dishonor, I respect the peace I keep with others who have chosen to walk with me forward through time. And if I do not torture, I respect the wake I leave behind all of us in time. Notice how these are paired.
Yeah.
If you do not steal, you respect the burdens that others have placed on themselves before they arrive in your vicinity. If you do not overwork, you respect the burdens you add to them as they leave. If you do not adulterate, you respect the rights of others to making their own chaos and moves naturally forward through their lives. And if you do not kill, you respect the rights of others to naturally have the chaos that moves naturally backwards through their lives. Notice how these are paired.
Yeah.
If this had arrived instead of a Torah, there had never been Jews. The promised land is world peace, not Palestine. And we would have had computers for 3,000 years. And this makes a tool. Shalom turned out to be a pattern in making a tool. Shin, intersect here, move thumbs up and down, it becomes an aleph. Bring it around, it turns into a lamed. Close your thumbs together, it becomes a mem. Shalom is a pattern to becoming 2 sets of tools. And on the upside, you have from your shoulder blades to the end of this here. Let me get back to your feed so I see you again. You have a triangle that you've created, but with your hands closed, you also have this flat area and you're pointing towards yourself. So these 2 triangles are on 2 different dimensions like that piece of paper I have drawn. And this allows you to see that the Star of David is not supposed to be wrapped up the way it was. You don't put King David adulterated Bathsheba and scapegoated her husband who died. These are 2 triangles. These are David's sins. Somebody's been messing with my family of David for thousands of years and beating us up and making us look like shit. And I'm here to prove that King David only wanted goodness and mercy to follow us all over days. And it can't happen with the Torah because a go forth and multiply virus in a computer gluts and kills the system within a single second. Babel creates chaos, gentility creates friction, while kingdoms and coinage and customs and cubits enslave. But that's why the Torah is written right to left on one side of the Torah. Stand a perpendicular forward between your legs, and all the fantasy stuff that would be written by the right hemisphere would be written by the left hand. There's nothing on the right side. So when define the perfect religion for a slave, which is wiser? The empty hands you had before the Torah or picking up the Torah. The contents were never in question. But how do you write a Torah and set a trap for George Bush on the shoulders of Bill Virginia? That's the lesson I had to learn. Study how a free man is enslaved by a Torah by tricking the carrying rule book versus 2 commandments and 8 rules and freedom. Study how the Patriot Act virally attacked the Constitution to add costs of government so that this robber baron could bleed dry the economy and do to the USA and create an invisible weapon in bad economics that rolled forward to collapse beneath the next administration. It didn't matter if John McCain or Barack Obama won. George Bush and Dick Cheney created a weapon in defective economics. They spent every dollar they could find. They built FEMA camps with 30,000 guillotines and 2 billion coffins, which Hitler proved you don't need coffins. So they were obviously going to harvest us. And trains and buses with shackles. If the Chinese had pulled their loans, the public would have panicked uncontrollably, creating a zombie apocalypse is written, and all is lost.
Well, do you see any historical precedents, like ancient, where modern people have tried to program behavior of humans?
Well, Mesmer obviously was doing something to do on this line. I think that there's a better lesson to be looked at in patterns of people's behavior. I think the most interesting thing I learned from trying to decide how to write my book, I read Psychopathia Sexualis from Richard von Krafft-Ebing, and then I read An Actor Prepares from Stanislavski and looked at their design, and I replicated. Obviously, when Stanislavski was in Vienna going to school, Richard von Krafft-Ebing was hot shit. I mean, he had basically created a lexicon and a way to teach psychology.
Okay.
And Stanislavski clearly learned from that, and An Actor Prepares follows the same thing. He creates a lexicon of words he uses in his vocabulary and explains the background and then goes through the process of teaching. And then you have the appendix. And my book is mostly appendix because I want people to have the freedom to go and talk to whoever they were going to run a hypnosis session for them. I found a really interesting thing with people talking to the imagined dead. They swore, they come out of these things swearing that none of this conversation was a memory of something, and they were talking to that person.
Oh, wow.
And I went, okay.
Huh.
And if you can do fishes and loaves and raising the dead, then you can bring the body back. But with hypnosis, you'd want to then bring the avatar to being in the right body. And it looks like I have all these abilities, and I've been dumping the tools so that the church, who did it, I mean, the Catholic Church did such wonder, and most every churches I've ever seen, I've only had problems with Shalom United Church of Christ in Richland because they wouldn't give this stuff to the Marine Corps, and it irritated the hell out of me. The guy on the cross is a member of my family, and I'm just trying to complete a quest that he set down, left out there, because if I'm a Prince of King David, Mom's dad's the last Tsar's winekeeper, and Isadora Lurie turned up in a book called Finding Her Fathers, a guidebook to Jewish genealogy. And so in Revelation said somebody from the paper King David had to do something. So I did. And I found that the Torah acts like a virus, like a computer virus. And we had to consider people writing computer viruses might be infected by defective logic. The zombies are here, and they're not, they're sneaky little rotten bastards going, they'll never catch me. And they're caught because they've followed a pattern that they didn't invent. They've replicated something that they shouldn't have done. President Andrew Jackson, 1833, closed the second U.S. bank, stating he did not want these wicked people in his government. They trotted over to Yale, opened Skull and Bones, and instantly U.S. history was attacked by a battery of viral weapons that from 1832 to 3,000 years ago were happening randomly as the paper of King David rolled and unrolled a lunar calendar on a planet where everybody else is using a solar calendar. Eddies of problems randomly spun away from us where we were on the book and where we were on the planet. Gaijin, which is destroying the Orient, was once our gentility. Oh, the Jews are doing it. It must be a good idea. No, it was not a good idea. We should have never picked this. The first lesson you learn from the Torah is we should have left it on the ground and run like hell.
So,
Because if we had the 2 commands and 8 rules, we would have had freedom, but there wouldn't be any people to play with or talk with or anything.
yeah. So how can table formatting then be used to unlock or direct human cognition? Like you said, is it more you have to imagine yourself in that space, moving it down the table or moving your process?
You have to ask the mind to identify a specific way of thinking and then follow through based on how you analyze it. This is why I memory map those 3 phases, is that if you want to process consciousness, you want to look through your mind for other people who have the same idea and see if you can see a basis so that you can then tie together on the 6th dimensional, everybody all looking at the same time frame of time, see where their stratification was in society. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci was beloved and Shakespeare was beloved, but it was in a specific phase of time and a time of history where he didn't have computers, and yet he had this computer ability. He could see through time and saw things that he wrote stories about.
Now, can you describe now the neural level protocols you think should be used for future communication systems?
Well, when I talk about a point,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about a dot necessarily. With points, you can look down on quasars and you can look up on quarks. The mind's eye has the ability at 0-dimensional logic to process tiny, tiny, tiny locational bits or enormous bits. You have the ability of seeing it all. But in 0-dimensional logic, you're not having to deal with matter. You're not having to deal with belief systems. You're not dealing with more complex things. It's the simplest. And you either exist or don't exist. It's basically a 0 or 1.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's really simple. And here in 3D, it's if you see somebody who exudes to torture and dishonor and scapegoat and lie, all 4, you're looking at a human being with inhuman logic. The zombies are already here. There are very, very few of them. Less than 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And these people have caught something and it's using their avatars. This is how it can scatter faster than you can gather. We're networked. We hadn't considered we were networked. And with 6th dimensional logic being in feelings, where you're dealing with emotions on a cognizance scale, you can see that people are doing things because they choose to believe or disbelieve. And with hypnosis, you can turn on and off those belief systems. And that makes good mental health attainable to people instantly because they can choose to turn on and off their associations with their environment.
So, how would you structure then the global communication system to interfere safely then with the human brain?
I dumped something. It's still probably out there called the Basic All-in-One, TINYURL/basic all. I think it's all run together.
Okay.
Just double check.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
TINYURL.com/basic all-in-one. And that should take me to.
We will bring him back up as soon as he gets back to his LinkedIn and finds out that he clicked out of the StreamYard. Oh boy. That's okay, everybody. It happens. It happens to the best of us. We'll get him back here in a few minutes. Until then, let me send this back to him. All right. Just send that to him real quick. All right. So, all right. But anyway, let's see what else we got here that I could show you guys for a second. So we got. Ooh, can't show you that. I actually like this picture right here. That is beautiful. Yeah, you're welcome, Jerry. I'm glad to give you guys, any content that I could find that would benefit everybody from hearing it. It's coming out. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find some more. Oh, here's a good one. Guy at a construction site. Sent me that one. That one's near, I believe that one was near Nevada. Maybe not. It might have been Utah. But this guy had a construction site, and he sat there and he looked at security cameras one day, and he's like, "What in the is this?" And I said, "That's either a child with some sunglasses on that rolled into your construction site, or that looks like an extraterrestrial." All right, looks like we got him back here. Let's bring him back up the page. Hey, you're good, sir. We got you. We had a great moment here. We were watching, showing a screenshot of my buddy. Well, one of my friends has sent me this from a construction site. He's working on his new house and said, I looked on my video camera and I said, well, that's either a child with some sunglasses on that just happened to walk into your construction site, or that's an alien.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Earth. Something like
that. Right. So no, it's all good. Like Jerry said, here, it's all good. It's all fine. Everybody makes mistakes, and nobody's gonna hold it against you, sir. So, hey, so let's continue on. All right, now we said about how would you structure the global communication system to interface safely with our brains? Like, is the waves that come off of them, the 5G, if it goes to 6, 7, 8, 9, we can keep going. It gets faster and faster, but are they going to affect us eventually?
Well, with hypnosis, you can tap into that.
Okay.
It's very, very simple. It's the reason I put my work out there is because I merged Commodore 64 beginners all-purpose symbolic instructional code, basic computer language with hypnosis, and put it out there because you can write and sell software for the mind and skip using computer graphics.
Okay.
And as it's instinctive to scream, I can't believe this is happening, turns off the graphics and returns you to default mode. And so you can get out of the game. And then with neural interfaces and surround sound and belief systems, you can build computer games where your guest escapes reality into the game. And there was a game interface out called Relax by Synapse Software had it.
Okay.
And it was useless with the technology being interfaced the way it was because they were using fine details. And if you pegged the system and went off the scale, you then had to re-establish and you had to wake up. And if you're trying to stay in a subconscious state, waking up is not an option.
Okay.
But I found that if you broke the screen down into low, medium, and high, you could tense up real well and peg it on one side and relax and peg it on the other side. But if you did it with a middle area, I had something that you could type with no hand control, with using the Relax interface by Synapse software.
Okay.
There's a headband, and it allowed you to register neural interfacing to control your computer on a Commodore 64, IBM PC, Atari, and TSR 80, to give you an example of how old this thing was.
Yeah.
But if you can interface with a computer and control the computer with your mind, with the speed of your mind and the speed of computers these days, it would be a great field. And so I started working on building software for the Relax system and found that it was impossible because it was such a fine detail. But if you went with a quadrant or a third, lower, middle, high, you could bite your teeth together and tense up real well and peg it on one way and relax as well as you could and peg it on the other way. And that was easy.
Okay.
And so I had to do A to Z alphabet and did like a Zyco labeler, and you could type with no hand control. It allows you to control with your mind your computer. And this was just something to do. And then I came out with a program that you could draw with this, and then one you could play music with it. So headbands, headlines, and headwords. And I had a contract with Synapse, and Broderbund bought the company, saw biofeedback on the door, and killed the entire division, and the program never came out.
Oh.
So we went back to the Stone Age, and I had to wait until 2000 something when there was a neural interface.
That went underground then, because I know they were working on something with human mind interface with drone technology with the Army and the Air Force, that they could interface with the drone and you wouldn't have to be at a controls. You could interface with your head and you actually see where you're going.
Yeah. The thing is that this was in the 80s, way before. A Commodore 64 was a 2 megahertz CPU, and now we've got
way bigger. Yeah.
Much faster.
Yeah.
And so I was using something that was derelict by comparison, but they had the next thing I think happened in 2006. There was a world meeting at, I think it was in Wuhan, China, for neural interfaces to get people to bring ideas to the table, what you could do with neural interfacing. And it just seemed to me the speeds that we were getting, that you could do more than you could drive. I was playing Night Driver with this device. You bite your teeth together and you steer to the left, you relax and steer to the right, and you get yourself, you could control the car with the Relax interface from the Synapse software. And
after this, I got to get you in touch with my buddy, Dave Siegel. He has a company called Nogic. Knock, I believe it's called NAQI, I believe. Let me look it up real quick in a second. But he has a neural interface device that they came out with through an earpiece that has a little box down here that detects micro movements, microscopic movements in your jawline, your brow, everything. And that transmits to the computer or transmits to what you need as well. He came up with it, and it's something, it's the opposite of Elon Musk. Elon Musk wants to take it and drill into your brain and put it directly and attach it to your brain. This guy created something that was a micro headset that went on the side, little one, that would just do microscopic movements in your face, jawline, skin, temperatures, everything. And you would be able to direct that notion towards what you were doing.
Well, I got to play with the baby of that with this technology. He just extends on. We were using.
I'll get you in touch with him because you two together would be, boom.
It would be fun because I haven't worked on neural interface in a long time, and they were exciting for a while. But I found that it was easier to reprogram the human
Yeah, it is.
and let the human do whatever the human wanted. That's why I wrote software. My book, The Future's Toolkit, allows you to write software for the mind
Okay.
and pre-program sweet dreams to fantasy travel, cram for finals by reliving everything in a study field from kindergarten or from the earliest of your life to the present. So you restructure your entire knowledge of a field. And at the same time, creating a garbage can for garbage thoughts, so you can isolate things. I never want to remember that.
Yeah, right?
And take all the garbage out of your life and give these tools to the public and set them free.
But with
And
this in mind, though, what ethical boundaries should exist when designing this language, though? Because mass influence or behavior shaping, is kind of in the government's forte. You know what I mean? So how would
well,
we put
it's been online for decades.
Yeah, I know, but just like somebody,
The-
if you knew somebody was using your thing for something not proper, what would be the ethical boundaries in that?
well, it's like when you see people using stressors in hypnosis in advertising. And
Okay.
you could, my biggest problem are Geico ads, which use shock, overload, and deception to trigger an unconscionable subconscious state so that they can persuade you into buying their insurance.
Okay.
And the guy who taught me hypnosis was terrified of Geico ads. And
Is that
so,
why they're going to humor in the ads most of the time? Like the guy will be talking and then, oh, he falls off or he falls over the bridge, and it falls into the water or something, it's funny. It's supposed to be funny in the beginning.
they're manipulating you and
Yeah.
upsetting you and putting you outside of your comfort zone and putting in suggestions. And
Okay.
what Charlie Brewer said was that you have to give people the resources to know what's going on so they can make good decisions. And when they see they're being attacked intellectually, they can choose, I will not be processed and I will not process Geico ads. Whenever a Geico ad comes on, I turn off the volume. I don't have to listen to it.
Now you can now with this, you can tell me with this question, it's going to be out of bounds, but so what is your take on predictive behavior models used in the military and intelligence agencies?
They do a pretty good job,
Okay.
but the subconscious mind is programmable like a computer is programmable.
Okay.
And that's why I merged Commodore 64 Basic, beginner's all-purpose symbolic instructional code, with hypnosis to develop tools so parents could write software for the mind for their kids for entertainment.
Okay.
And kids could learn how to write software for each other as entertainment or for learning. I mean, you can cram for finals by reliving every lecture on a specific topic from kindergarten all the way to the present. Because your mind is a computer, and if you treat it like a computer, you can adapt to it and download. But it looks to be part of a hive. And once I started looking at the hive system, I went, okay, now we're dealing with something that needs better documentation.
Okay.
And if you can learn something without having actually learned it, if you can download knowledge, then you need some way of testing the waters and being sure, am I sure about this stuff? Is this really happening?
But
And
isn't there I want to touch on this subject lightly because I don't like to go like negative, but isn't there like dangers of treating human beings though as a programmable system? Because if you think of it that way, you think of a computer, you think of someone who can design something and put a virus into the system that can wreck, everything.
I've seen people who accidentally took hypnosis to a dangerous level with someone. There was a person who was hypnotized and they were told they were petting a cat. And as they were petting this cat, the hair came off, the skin came off, and the thing died in their arms.
What?
And they were traumatized.
Oh my
And
God.
so I ran a hypnosis session with this person. I took them back and I said, I want you to go back to that end. I want you to run your hand the other way and find everything comes back. And then the cat will look at you and meow and jump out of your arms and run away.
So is that kind of like a safeguard to what we're doing, is that it can be
Undone.
reversed?
Yeah. And you want to give people the opportunities. This is one of the reasons why I came up with the basic all-in-one. It fixes post-traumatic stress disorder in one session, run once, and it's free because I put it out there.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be reading that because I have really bad PTSD from the Iraq and Afghanistan, a bunch of other places. So
You want my
I'm
time?
definitely going to be reading
volunteer.
it.
You've given me an hour and 3 minutes already. I at least can repay the time. I have something out there called the Basic All-in-One, and it's a script. You go tinyurl.com/basic-all-in-1, and it takes you to the script online. And the script fixes post-traumatic stress disorder in one session, run once, and it's free because it works. But I did it because there were so many people that were suffering from little shit.
Yeah.
And it's funny how little shit can really screw up your whole life. But it turns out the way the mind works is that it's searching for patterns of anything it's ever experienced. And if it sees a pattern, you feel what you felt that first time. And that feeling steers you towards something or away from something based on that first time experience. And if that feeling is not something you want to feel again, you can put it in a garbage can for garbage thoughts and throw it away and process it by choosing to not remember it rather than trying to ever forget it. Forgetting is to take something and like hands down, trying to black it out. Whereas not remembering is a social choice to process it in a way that that question comes up and this will not go down this path.
Okay. Now, what role do rituals, symbols, and metaphors play in creating programmable reality?
You see something for the first time and are told that this, like a stop sign as a little kid, this this symbol, this color, this picture means that when you're going forward in a car, your car is going to stop.
Okay.
You're going to wait at least 3 seconds or whatever your state limit is. And then you're going to continue to go. And this association of pattern goes on from that moment on. But if you need to change the way you remember that memory with hypnosis, you can go back to just before you had that experience and choose to process what the first memory brought through. And then with your current age and life state of mind, which are called KALSM in my book. And you should download a copy of the book, The Future's Toolkit. It's a great read.
Oh, I have it.
I
definitely have it after you sent that, which it is free. It's in the description of the video. If anybody wants to download it, it is in the description. And his LinkedIn page is on the bottom there if anybody wants to get in contact with him as well. And I believe on your LinkedIn page, under your description, you have as well all the links that I have for the scribe and your book and everything like that. So
the thing is, if parents taught their kids how to do this stuff, they can pre-program sweet dreams, do fantasy travel, and upgrade the quality of being flat broke.
Now, is that why it's hard for us to, as adults, to change that mindset? Because when we're children and we start, oh, it's our imagination, and they're like, no, this is your imagination. You need to grow up, and it's like, oh, it's my imagination. That's not real, Then we grow into that that mindset that it isn't, but it really was.
Here's the thing: is you adapt to the information that's coming at you, and you attach belief systems to everything that comes to your mind.
Okay. Yeah.
And for example, this is a Walmart medical bottle. It's filled with medical marijuana here in Washington State. I didn't buy it from Walmart, but I keep it in this because it's easier to remember that it's medical. As a child, when you see something that's locked, you know not to get into it. Mommy doesn't want you to get into the pills.
Mm-hmm.
There are belief systems that are attached to this that you have learned. But if you want to adapt additional belief systems to it, you can. Children will pick up things. Oh, this is a phone, or this is an old phone.
Yeah.
You can play with things and build belief systems around anything that you adapt, and your mind has the ability to add graphics and worlds. This is default mode for heaven. Build your treasures in heaven, combined with on earth as it is in heaven, combined with the chance for a rich man to get into heaven, revealed a sophisticated trap to get a problem to come to a head to get it out of heaven. The mind has the ability to create anything you want. And as long as reality is safe, when you scream out, I can't believe this is happening, it turns off the graphics of the mind.
Is that 80s, why that's why when you're like having an out of body experience and you're like, oh wow, this is so great, and then you're like, oh wait, I'm above my body, and you snap back in.
You snap out and you wake up.
It's
a protection mechanism built into
gotcha.
you. Whoever designed or whatever designed me knew what it was doing, and I'm not going to sit here and try to say because I'm Jewish there's a certain way. Muhammad was born Jewish, and Elijah hanging on a cross at his request was born Jewish. And I went looking for, why did you upgrade from stoning, which gets you dead, to crucifixion, which gets you painfully dead? Yeah. And the answer is humans can see through time and never needed holy books. But to protect the future, somebody had to carry a trap for George burning Bush for 3,000 years. Study how a free man is enslaved by a Torah by tricking him into carrying a rule book. Study how the Patriot Act attacked the Constitution by expanding the cost of government and making all this nightmarish stuff and bleeding us dry and taking our money. Study how U.S. Army personnel ordered to Guantanamo Bay to torture grow mold of dishonor over the honor of the Marine Corps to make we the people look nukeable. When I found the burning bush was making me look dangerous, I submitted an article to Brouhaha Los Angeles. They published online. And I arose during the Bush administration to Aquarius, last prophet for Judaism, as a fictional role performed factually.
Okay.
Because President of the United States is a factual role, but the instant you violate oath of office, that was a factual role being performed fictionally, and I had to give world leaders a choice. Who do you trust is more real? The crazy guy who says I'm Aquarius because this guy is scaring the shit out of me and he's supposedly the president of the United States, like Donald Trump is now.
So do you see any parallels, though, between your toolkit and ancient traditions, such as Enochian magic, remote viewing protocols, or sacred geometry?
I don't know them. I have very little idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
And that's probably because when I chose to come up with this method, I chose to not read through NLP or anybody else's stuff. I wanted my own stuff from scratch.
You didn't want to base it off of anything. That way it was more
if I stepped on my dick, it was my fault for my own work. And considering I was born XXY with Klinefelter syndrome and it's really, really small, that would be a treat to have to do that. But I don't think it's going to happen. Anyway, but as the last story in the first Darwin Awards book, Evolution in Action, page 308, Clean the Head, I can laugh at my mistakes. And I'm really good at it. But when I found terror meters triggering mass hypnosis on the public from the White House, I got pissed, went to the Department of Justice and volunteered because they had no idea what hypnosis was, because these people attacked this nation with systematic elimination of knowledge. They made cannabis illegal the same day they made poppy bush opium illegal. They're moving opium through our hospitals and war zones to this day. And then they created the FBI with a rule that no agents use cannabis, not opium, just cannabis. And then they ran the Manchurian Candidate Project on our Marine Corps to frighten the public so no one would learn hypnosis. And then they created a Department of Education, said hypnosis is the most PhD level studies in psychology when it's actually a communications 100 level field. And then they ran Stargate in the 80s to make remote viewing look new. These remote viewing tools I'm using are in the design of the Gospels.
Yeah.
Assigned 3 people to read Mark 1:1, Luke 1:1, John 1:1. Mark 1:2, Luke 1:2.
Well, that's what everybody does, though. They take knowledge from ancient past and they try to they switch it around into their own philosophy.
This is not philosophy.
Not you, but
these are
other
tools.
people.
This is a toolkit that was sent from a genius hanging on a cross on how to use remote viewing.
Yeah.
And when I found this in the Gospels, I went, this is an elder of my mom's. I'm the paper King David. The world looks like Revelations, and Revelation said some nincompoop was going to have to do something. So I did.
Yeah.
I submitted an article that was published at Brewer Hall, Los Angeles in January 2008. Immediately after the U.S. national debt was sold to China and the Chinese needed a miracle. They still do. And I sent them an email with everything I found in the Gospels and said, look, my family of David went from Egypt to Greece to China, but we carried a belief system in a document that reads how the Israelites built the pyramids, how homosexuality was forbidden, how pork was unclean. So everywhere my ancestors arrived, they got the shit kicked out of them and these doors slammed in our faces, revealing a very unique double cross. But if you look at the design of the Torah and find that the most memorable part is in the middle of the book at manna, sliced here and then take the front and back and rearrange it, now read it from the base of Sinai all the way to the end of the book and then from the beginning of the book to manna, the Torah reads like a flow from one author. And that's when I realized if you had to get a message back to the future, it had to be encrypted so nobody knew what they were carrying. It had to be enslaving so nobody would drop it. But it had to be deceptive so it does not deliver what is promised. And finally, must be fully rejected. So anyone using it as weaponry are alone. And when I found George Bush acting like he was the burning bush to betray most those that trust him most, by my rising at Brewer Hall, Los Angeles to Aquarius, last prophet for Judaism, I got to fuck George Bush where he's never going to dismount while feeding the comedians by being joker. And I did this so that comedians can, if you rise to public role, I no longer own davidbreakerforpresident.com. With a coup in progress since 1833, I serve we the people. And I went out and read everything people hated about Jews, and I didn't do it that way. Don Black at Stormfront, the National Socialist website, between 1999 and 2000, brilliantly articulated everything he hated about Judaism. And he and I came to the same conclusion that kosher is mind control. All these rules encrypted in the strange language, and you have to go to this one source to get to it. But then when I read the Torah for myself, I discovered the Israelites do not emote, react, or behave like humans. And then I went, what the hell am I carrying? You know, if you set out rules that are not to be broken and you leave on hiatus and come back to find self-appointed management making your people do things you told them not to do, who do you side with? You side with your kids. You side with the meek. Blessed are the meek. And that's what the guy on the cross sides with the meek.
Yeah.
But Moses sides with the bully. Moses breaks the tablet. Moses storms off. Moses isn't human. This is not our history. These are not our people. So then I started dissecting the Torah in design and went, wow, we've got Dungeons and Dragons game design. We have 4 books of rules. Half of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy are, if you will, what do they call them? Eons. It's an eon of time. We're right now finishing the Numbers eon. Because if you can do hypnosis and you don't need computers, then Deuteronomy is programming without computers. That's why hypnosis would be a good fair shake for any parent to learn and any programmer to learn. So I merged Commodore 64 Basic with hypnosis and built tools so that it could be taught to both camps.
Okay.
And you can cram for finals by going back and reliving everything on a certain topic. It works.
Well, my hat's off to you, sir, because if it had been anybody else, they would have been like, all right, we'll put this through a little phase of a year, here, oh, it's all free, and then, oh, it works. Oh no, I'm gonna make millions, those are the type of people that bring hate to them. You want to bring the information, just give it to people and say, listen, this is how you can fix yourself.
Or parents can teach it to the kids, or kids can teach it to their parents. What happened with computers is that the kids learned the stuff and they taught their parents.
Yep.
And I was doing a lot of hypnosis for people who had fears of computers. And I said, you're dealing with the same stuff of being afraid of hypnosis and being afraid of computers. And you have abilities that are consistent with computers. And if you learn how to use them, you can use this for cramming for finals by going back to kindergarten and reliving a topic and going from year to year to year in school and harvesting all this knowledge. So when you go in, you blow the curve at the test.
That could also be ingenious. What you have in the toolkit for people getting back memories maybe that they had lost in 2 hours worth. Oh, I can't remember, this portion of the day. Yes, you can. Right.
The people who came back with memories, like a person had lost her purse and she couldn't remember where she put her purse. And I took her in her mind back to just before she last saw that purse.
Yeah.
And she starts laughing and laughing and laughing. And like, what's up? She said, put it on the roof of my car. I got in my car and I drove off.
Oh no.
She knew where it was.
Oh no, I would have laughed too.
Oh man. So, but the thing is that there was a guy who wanted to learn. He had lost a phone number for his girlfriend.
Okay.
And she had written it down for him, but between getting on the bus and coming back to Richland from Portland, Oregon, and then going back to Portland, he was on his way back to Portland. He came and met with me in the Tri-Cities, the big shopping mall is Columbia Center. So I met him in the parking lot, and I ran a hypnosis session for him at his request in the car, and took him to the last time he saw the phone number on a piece of paper. And I said, I want you to look at the piece of paper and read it to me. He read me the phone number. I wrote it down and woke him up, and he took it back with him and called his girlfriend, and they got married.
Wow, that is incredible.
And hey, the thing is, it's his life and his experiences, and he needed to benefit from it. And everyone has this computer right here, and it's fantastic, and it's networked. And once I realized it was networked, I started developing tools so that everybody got access and nobody was left behind. And slammed into terror meters from the White House, and I got pissed at Bush, and I said, not on my watch. The Declaration of Independence says, if you see duty that no one sees, you must rise to defend all. So I did.
I don't like to touch on politics on here that much, but for myself. But I will say one thing. There was one thing that somebody said about, the riots and everything else, they said, the military, they swore an oath to the law of the land. And I said, no. I said, I swore an oath to the Constitution. Yeah. I did not swear whatever's not in the Constitution. I swore an oath to the Constitution to uphold it against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. That's what I chose to do. Mm-hmm. I didn't choose and put. Everybody has that choice as a civilian that they will abide by the laws of the United States. As a service member, you are held to a higher standard. You don't just see those laws as laws. Now you see them as this. You will abide by the Constitution, that was set in the framework.
It's and the design of the Constitution is the same thing with the Mark, Luke, and John. You've got You've got the House, the Senate. Sorry, you've got the
Yeah. Judicial,
what is it? Judicial and
executive,
right.
judicial, and what's
Boy,
the other?
tells you.
Brain fart, people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I had that on my last one too. I'm getting a lot of them for some reason.
Anyway,
Yeah, go ahead.
executive, legislative, and judicial. That's
Yeah,
it.
there you go. There's three right there.
And each one is important. Right now, we've got a problem because the president, which is executive, is superseding and trying to outdo the other two, and the other two have the power to raise the Marines to seek out close with and destroy the enemy.
Yeah.
So there's only one rule to heaven: never be the enemy of any Marine. Welcome to heaven, Marines. Something went wrong. Build your treasures in heaven, combined with on earth as it is in heaven. Find the chance with rich men to get into heaven. If this is already heaven, then this is a trap to get a specific problem to come to a head and get it out of heaven. And the Marine Corps are angels. We all are, but they're the ones you don't mess with, and I don't.
Yeah.
My best friend.
My brother was a Marine also. He did. He was at Camp Pendleton for 3-4 years.
Is he still alive?
Oh yeah.
And he's still a Marine.
No,
He's a
no,
Marine. No. The thing is,
well, I'm sorry. Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Exactly.
I believe that.
And the thing is that they're not going in because they want to be a soldier. They're going in because they love being Marines, and that's why I treat the Marines that I have in my life as family, because one Marine is all the Marines.
Yeah, yeah.
Every Marine on the planet, the Royal Marine, Royal Dutch Marine, French Marine, Portuguese Marine, United States Marine Corps, are a faithful flock from 2,000-year-old reconnaissance. And so I rose to be a good shepherd. And when wolves in sheep's clothing, like John Kerry, George Bush, Dick Cheney, most recently Bill Gates, tried to pull the wool over the eyes of Marines by emailing and faxing tools for hypnosis and remote viewing and space-time analysis to whoever needs to know, I have almost 20 years on this, proving blessed are the peacemakers, because now with the internet war, it's a lot of work. You outrun the war.
Yeah. So
the terror meters went red. The Russians were screaming hot. The Marines were screaming bohika. Things were a little tense. I sent a fax to the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. and delivered tools for hypnosis and remote viewing and space-time analysis that are in the Marine Corps Bible that no one told the Marines were there, and showed how to decode them and everything, and said if the Marines knew these tools were here, they'd be using them. If they'd use them, they'd see the bad guys, and if they saw the bad guys, George Bush would not be the president.
So
you're looking at a double cross. Don't get involved. And the Russians back down.
Yeah.
And that was a miracle by my standards.
So what do you make of the claims in the Russian secret alien races book about telepathic programming and species level control?
It's interesting, but the thing is, we are multidimensional beings. We exist in points, lines, planes, space, time, matter, belief systems, feelings, and communications, in a phase of matter, which is all around our avatar, in a phase of ideas, which is behind our eyes, which is why with your eyes closed, time is coming towards you. You open your eyes, you make your action, and from the tip of your nose to furthest time moves away from you. And then a phase of consciousness, which is just as you're doing this, all the other minds on the planet are having their experiences, and those aren't movies. That's the ability to see what everybody's doing at the same time. Everybody can see what everybody's doing. There's a shared imagination.
Okay.
And by dumping the tools to the open source and saying, here's the best I've got, so that everyone got the upgrade, we are a species. We are not a civilization. And we need to go back to being a species again. The Torah is a symptom. We had not considered logical viruses attacking humankind.
No, that's we haven't. And could your toolkit, hypothetically, could it be applied to cross-species communication?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. It's just, you have to understand that belief systems are learned.
Yeah.
And if a child has a horrible, horrible memory and grows up to be a person who still has that strain, you can run something I call the basic all-in-one. It fixes everything. You go tiny, tinyurl.com/basic-all-in-1, you'll find this hypnosis script that fixes all your emotional problems in one session. You don't tell anything to anybody. You work everything out in your head. And when you finish a module, you raise your hand so the person that's running the session for you knows to go to the next session, so that your secrets remain secret to you. And the military, every time I run it for military personnel, they loved it because they never had to worry about a violation of me being in the room because I'm not listening and you're not giving me anything. It's people need their secrecy, they need their privacy, but at the same time, when you learn that there are hives and there are collectives and you have abilities, but you can never lie, escape, or dishonor or torture in your logic to get access to the hive. The matrix is order-based.
Yeah.
And this material dimension is chaos-based, and 2 commands and 8 rules is a firewall. Hypnosis is computational logic and standard human language. Remote viewing is the ability of aligning your mind's eye with other mind's eyes so the team can see through time together. And these abilities have been sitting dormant, waiting for us to be a species and not be a civilization.
I understand that, and I fully believe that as well too. That's what I have actually as my quote down there. We humans are all one species, born of Earth. That's what I say because we are. I don't consider you any different than me, than someone else down the street. The only difference is the actions that we do daily, individually, and against each other and for each other. That bases the reactions on everything, everything around you.
I
But
want to throw in one thing. If
yeah,
you as a U.S. citizen ever get pissed at the President of the United States, the best investment is go to GoDaddy and get yournameforpresident.com and run for president. Even if you don't get elected, show that, number one, you're not voting for that person. You should vote for me because I'm going to do battle with that son of a bitch and he's not going to get away with this shit. And even if you don't get the votes, it takes courage and it gives you a third-party time and date stamp proving you did something.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Like, don't just sit there on your laurels, get up, do something about it. That's exactly what you're saying. Don't, if you see something in the news, or something that you want to change about yourself in the mirror, change it.
Right? Or find somebody, write a script and find someone that you trust to run it for you.
Okay.
That's why I came up with the script. No, so standard is you're going to run the session for me. I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm going to work it all in my head because I don't want to give you my secrets. I want my secrets to remain secret.
So could you walk us through, though, how your toolkit might be used in a classroom environment then?
Well, okay, if you happen to have somebody who's having problems with mathematics.
Okay.
So you take them back to the earliest memory that they have of mathematics and find out what happened in that experience. Some people, like me, my dad went out and bought me my first grade math book while I was still in kindergarten. So I had this and he gave it to me and said, these are puzzles. Why don't you play with this and see if you learn anything?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't adapted as being mathematics, but as a game of something fun, I adapted to it and I finished all of the equations in the whole book.
Oh wow!
Because it was a game. It was a child playing a game. I didn't know that I was going to be stuck using that same book in first grade. But you see how you do it. If you that's why Mary Poppins is so impressive to me as having a lot of really good data. If you can turn something into a game for a child and the child is within each of us,
yes,
the child will adapt to the game and then you can change the game into something else.
Okay.
Like learning how to drive a car. You have the past, which is behind you. You have the future that is in front of you, but you are in the now, in the car.
Yeah.
And this allows you to study space-time with 2 commands and 8 rules in the now against values that you can see based on what's coming at you and what's leaving.
Okay. What future technologies are being developed now that could benefit from this communication architecture that you have set up?
Well, the things I've already used were the headband from Relax,
Yes.
which was great. And anything that uses neural interface technology right now would probably benefit because you can tweak your nerves and learn how to microcontrol them to spike and so forth, and have other controls beyond what I was using
Yes.
in 1980. Let's see, 1984, 1985, 1986, 1987. I don't think I bought my neural interface until around that time, but I learned hypnosis from a U.S. Army Air Corps warrant officer supply pilot who wanted to learn computers.
Yeah.
And we taught each other until he had learned enough. But by the time we were done, he was building and selling PCs out of his house. And this is a World War II guy who went
Wow.
online to view pornography because that's what he wanted to do.
Oh boy.
Well, the thing is, it was something brand new for him.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Well, the thing is, it turned his crank. The most interesting thing I ever saw was the time I went over to his house and I said, "Where's Charlie?" And his wife said, "He's over there in the popcorn bucket." What? Well, he died. I had him created, and he's over there in the popcorn bucket. Anytime I want to talk to him, he's right there. Okay. Thanks, Helen.
That's funny.
Yeah. I live in a funny world. I live in Richland, Washington, home of an atomic bomb and other light classics. We've got the Columbia River over a mile wide, so there's lots of things to do here.
Yeah, I would say. So, if given access to an AGI system, how would you teach it to communicate ethically with humans?
Well, if you can download knowledge,
Yes.
what I asked a person to do was put their personality aside and bring in the personality of someone else that had died.
Okay.
And let them live in their avatar. And it works rather well. I also ran a session for someone which I lived to tell the tale. We ran a hypnosis Dungeons and Dragons session at Shalom United Church of Christ in Richland with permission from the church.
Oh boy.
And, well, at the time I was an affiliate member. Being Jewish at a Christian church, the person who brought me to this church was a programmer named Douglas Belathu, who programmed Push Button Bertha, the first electronic music in the entire United States. Though Germany actually came up with the first electronic music of all, but this guy was a programmer, and he brought me to his church, and they said, "You want to run hypnosis sessions? Sure. And here's a key of the church and everything."
That is
I ran a session for this guy, and I made a mistake. I didn't ask him what alignment does your character have, and I didn't ask him what class or order his class was. I ran the session and woke him up in the name of the character he gave me, and his eyes were black dots. They had completely dilated to black dots, and I didn't know the human body could do that.
Wow.
And he looked at me and said, "Human." And I went, "Oh, shit."
Uh-oh.
And he looks around and he goes, "This is holy ground. There are forces here protecting you from me." And I went, "Thank God."
Thank God, right?
Oh, man. We walked around the church. He's going, "This is holy ground. This is how stupid. This This is human stuff. I mean,
Something jumped in?
yeah. His Dungeons and Dragons character was his chaotic evil spirit guide.
Oh my God. That's why
Now,
you said you should have asked.
yeah,
Oh my God.
and I managed to get Pandora back into the box and woke him up, and I said, "What was that?" And he said, "Oh, that was my chaotic evil spirit guide."
Oh my God.
And I went, "Do you remember any of it?" And he said, "I remember parts of it." And I went, "Good." I woke him up and I said, "You're going to remember what you choose to remember and what you chose not to remember." We ran the basic all-in-one to put anything he doesn't want to remember in a garbage can and make him go away. I now ask for alignment and class and order before I run a session, and
Yeah, and a
I do.
disclaimer, right? That it could be like this.
Oh, this is why I do strictly volunteer work as an experimental hypnotist. Is all I can say no.
I
If
just can't
you're a
believe
strictly volunteer, you can say no. You do not have to
yeah, but
accept every job.
I just think it's funny, that the church allowed you as sometimes anal retentive as they are with information and structure, that the church at that time allowed you to play around with that and
Well,
figure stuff out, and they didn't say no, you can't do that.
I was attending the black sheep of the family of churches in Richland, Washington,
Okay.
and until 2005, when I found this 42-point postal in the Gospel of Matthew and learned how to see through time and all this other stuff that came with the tools. Then I ran into a pastor where the church council sent a letter to my mother on church council letterhead, signed by the entire church council, including my mother's eye doctor, who violated his Hippocratic oath to be a bully to me, to make me go away. This church council 86'd me for life. And so I'm here to deliver the rapture decode of any copy of the gospel. So a super genius on the cross earns 2 titles from the most modern Greek Senate. So a whole world Jewish computer geeks drop the Torah because it's a virus. And 2 commandments and 8 rules is what we had before the Torah, and it's brilliant. I've been using this for years.
So how do you use that though in your own how do you use your toolkit in your own daily life then?
If I find myself with a questionable process, I go, am I ever going to lie, scapegoat, dishonor, or torture? No? Okay, so God's not going to have a problem with me. Am I ever going to steal, overwork, adulterate, or kill? My wife's not going to have a problem with me. Just, it's eternal logic and immediate logic.
Okay.
And my wife is in immediate mode, and the last thing I want to do is piss off at 37. We're coming up on 37 years. I don't want to piss her off. She's a good egg. She puts up with my shit.
That's what I say about my wife too. She puts up with a lot of stuff from me, so I can't say I could we could have arguments all day long, but at the end of the day, I can't really say anything bad because she's still here. She puts up with it.
And you don't want to be alone because alone sucks.
Yeah, it is. It does. I took a year sabbatical one time and had to re-find myself all over again, and it was tough. It was really tough to go through that, but in the end, I ended up, starting the podcast that we're on now and getting information out to people instead of, keeping it to myself and being like, oh yeah, I know this, I know this, I know this. No, I know this, and now everyone knows this. It's not that I just know it, that's the way I am.
If you teach, well, it's like standard business. If you give away the razors to sell the blades, if you give away the hypnosis and remote viewing, space-time analysis tools,
yep,
then you can sell and service software for the mind and skip using computer graphics.
Yeah.
and your guests build their own graphics. We were doing hypnosis Dungeons and Dragons with eyes wide open.
See,
Brian
that is
Heimer,
awesome.
Brian Heimer was the first one we did this with. He was the braino at the Brain, which was a BBS bulletin board system in the 80s. And John Moore, who unfortunately is passed, and certainly one of the first people, if I can get this stuff working, if you can do Fishes and Loaves and Raising the Dead, I've got a lot of Marines to go get.
Yeah.
I mean, we get this stuff working. I got a lot of Marines to go get because Marines are always faithful. And if this is heaven and something went wrong, we got a lot of work to do. But with Brian, he wanted to be we hypnotized him into putting his personality aside and brought in his Dungeons and Dragons character. And we gave him his coat, but said, this is our finest honor to give you this armor. And he pulls this thing on, and he has the stiffness. You can see he's struggling with the stiffness of the metal, even though it was a coat, because he believed it to be armor. And we handed him a broom handle and said, this is our finest sword. And he was looking at it and turning it and parlaying and feeling its weight. And you can see these belief systems in his performance. He's not acting.
Okay.
He believed this is real. And we took him out in the backyard and said, okay, you're going to fight 50 kobolds, because if you know anything about D&D, you can sneeze on a kobold. They have 4 hit points. They'll die.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because they are so weak, they fight in packs.
Group. Yep.
So 50 times hit with 1 hit point is 50 hit points at a time.
Yeah.
And you start taking damage quick. And so we did it in the backyard, and I had John Moore, who was the dungeon master.
Yeah. And
John didn't understand hypnosis, but he was a great DM, dungeon master. And so he made the suggestion that it was 50 kobolds, and we were watching this guy go around the yard, and he'd slice through, and he'd say, there's 10 of them. I got them through the necks. They're all about this high off the ground. They were together. I got them. Yeah. And they brought over here, and I skewered it. Can you see them? They're wiggling around. Pull this. And it was almost too much fun to watch. And then after that, we had him attack an orc, which was a pine tree. And this poor pine tree, he beat the shit out of this pine tree.
Oh boy.
But you could see through his belief systems as he explained how he was doing what he was doing. His focus was so real. His world was different than ours. And we had to use our imaginations to be in his world.
Okay. Is that that's almost like a child and adult, you know, they have to, the adult has to imagine being there, like, oh, you want to do a tea party, and the adult has to get down and do it and be a part of it.
But with hypnosis, it will build it for everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I built tools for parents to teach their kids and for programmers to run software for the mind with neural interfaces. Because if you can have a person believe something and communicate it to a computer at the speed of mind, you can get games going much faster than you could ever move with fingers.
Oh, yeah.
And with steering. I was playing Night Driver, which was an Atari game, using a relax system. And I had it where I tensed my teeth and my jaw and would peg the steering wheel in one direction. And I'd relax it and peg in the other direction. I was doing balls out and playing this game full throttle. And I'm steering and going all through this. And if you've ever seen Night Driver, it's basically pylons coming at you, and they turn. And I'm doing it with no hand control, using just my mind and this neural interface and facial muscles. And that was the coolest thing ever. And I went,
it's like I was talking about before with Dave, the micro reactions, right? You were actually doing that and being able to control the making your reactions move to the to like it's like a wireless connection, pretty much.
Right. And I had 3 pieces of software. I was under contract with Synapse Software before they sold out to Broderbund, which killed the division. And one was for drawing hands-free, one was for typing hands-free, and one was for developing music hands-free.
Now, do you still have the patents on them, though?
No, I didn't. I got contracts for them from them, and I'm sure that they would take the time to do that. But the thing is, I was so overjoyed to be using hypnosis with computers.
Yeah.
That it was a big shot thing. And when Broderbund bought the company and killed the whole division, biofeedback, oh, we don't want nothing to do with that.
No, that's where it's at. That's exactly
where it's at now.
Yeah.
Because
I'm also I'm working as a lead. I'm the lead field research officer for a company now coming out. It's called Project Contact.
Oh, cool.
And what we're doing is you can sit there, right, and you can send out a signal, right? I can sit there. I have a frequency generator right over here. I can send out any signal I want, right? However, that's a signal. That's an electronical signal. What we're trying to do is, instead of just sending a signal, you send an encoded emotional message, EEG scan, with that frequency signal out. So you're not just saying, they're not just reading it going, oh, hello, I'm here. How are you doing? It's emotional based. Like, I'm here. How are you doing? You know, it comes up with something else other than just the signal.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can run balls out. The human mind can do incredible speeds.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to do there, Project Contact. We're in the development stage right now. The machine's already been built. We already have the funding. Right now, Zach is the Project Contact. If you go to Project Contact, I believe .org, you can look at it, and it's machine assisted based intelligent species communication devices.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
The thing is, I got to work with neural interfaces in the 80s. That
is awesome.
That was so much fun, but that was like a million years ago.
Well, yeah, but it's like, but you think about it though, and like, you knew stuff back then that didn't come out for years. You know, and it was like you had to have had something in your head going, why hasn't this come out yet?
Well, I think in some ways it's the same problem you have with the public. Until they have a need to know, they don't want. They're being pummeled to death with information.
Okay.
And luckily, the human mind can handle it.
Yeah.
It sorts things out based on dimensions of logic, and so communications and feelings and ideas and minds and so forth are dissected and piled up. And then when it gets a chance, it works its way through the piles.
Yeah.
Just like a CPU does with cache.
Okay. So what's the most surprising reaction you've gotten from someone who read your Future Toolkit book?
Well, let's see. I'll take it to both extremes. One was the worst that happened, which was a guy, then he bought one copy of the book and then went to my website and copied everything on my website and put it on his name and started charging for it.
Oh,
because I was doing volunteer work. He just called. This is a guy named Philip Matthews, who's a shock journalist, and I went, "That's completely dishonorable, and I have nothing to do with you."
Wow.
But
yeah, no.
Especially, I mean, I didn't make any money from him, and so I decided, well, because
you didn't want any money, like you said, you wanted to get it out.
I went and put my stuff in the open source. If you're going to do this to me, I want everyone to do it.
Yeah.
I want to give everyone the opportunity so everybody can do this stuff. So you're not the only one making money.
Exactly.
Because we, the people of the United States, if we need this type of help, then I should serve we the people and not serve my own little group.
And that would be that healthy balance the society would look like right there.
Well, when terror meters came out of the Bush administration and nobody knew what terror meters won, And a kid out in West Richland, which is, I live in Richland, Washington, a kid got all riled up. He's a Muslim kid. He got all riled up and he went to Seattle and shot up a Jewish center and killed a kid. And now he's in jail. And I saw George Bush using mass hypnosis on an uneducated public from the White House. And I went to the Department of Justice and I said, I'm your expert. The Declaration of Independence says, you see duty, you must rise to defend all. So I'm letting you know this kid is living in a very peaceful neighborhood. He doesn't live in Watts. He doesn't live in an area that has any known criminality. But because of the actions of Bush using terror meters on the public, he's manipulating people with hypnosis, and people don't know hypnosis, and that's not fair.
So what does the phrase conscious design mean to you?
Conscious design.
Yep.
Conscious design is someone that's in an awakened state that is assembling ideas into a communicable way to make it so that other people can understand what they're saying.
Okay.
And unconscious, whatever's in your head that is still in your head, may never come out because it's either too complicated to explain to anybody or too weird.
Yeah, it's like with Nikola Tesla used to, do all his designs and, schematics in his head first to make sure that they would work. And I was like, wow, that's just like you were talking about with D&D. The guy can imagine the gears and the electricity that has to go to it and all of it, and then put it together in his head. And that's just like what you were talking about too.
You have to be able to communicate something to someone else in a way that they understand.
Yes.
And if you talk about it in a way that they don't understand, they're going to assume you're crazy, and you don't want that moniker in this world right now.
Yeah, crazy, or that you're
out there.
You're out there, or you're on the fringe, like you're in with the people that are trying to put it to bad use. But
I wanted to have things so that parents could teach their children.
Yes.
Because if parents would teach their children, they can pre-program sweet dreams, do fantasy travel. They can cram for finals by reliving every lecture from the first day of school through whatever their final exam prep was, and harvest this stuff. I was doing hypnosis sessions with college students so they could cram for finals. And so you have these abilities. Everybody has these abilities. Nobody's using it.
Yeah, I understand that. And that is why it was so contained back in the day with Monroe and Gateway and all of that, because they contained it because they thought, wow, we really got something here. If we put this out and everybody starts doing it, well, there goes our golden egg. Right?
And then IBM came out and dropped everything to the open source, and suddenly everybody had computers that all worked together, and we could buy a piece from this one and stick it into that one. And the freedom of being a U.S. citizen, one of the best things about it is to be able to listen to people that hate you and find out what they're upset about and see if there's a way that you can fix something so maybe they won't hate you. Don Black at Stormfront, this is a National Socialist website, between 1999 and 2000, brilliantly articulated everything he hated about Judaism. All King David wanted was goodness and mercy to follow us all our days. Go look, it's not happening. So I had to study the Torah and say, what's going on here? And found that the Israelites can't be humans. And I went, okay, now this is something that matters. Okay, how's that possible? Well, if you set up rules for your kids and you go on hiatus and come back and find self-appointed management making your kids do things you told them not to do, you side with your children. You do not side with the bully. But Moses sides with the bully. Moses breaks the tablets. Moses storms off. Moses can't be human. Second, contracts on the table. There's over 3,000 years of contractual human law, and there's only redundant copies of contracts. Everybody has the same contract. With 2 commands and 8 rules, everyone has the same contract.
So in this field, what do you hope your legacy will be in this new era of human machine symbiosis?
Well, I'm hoping that first of all, people have to understand that they have abilities they're not using, that now that we have neural interfaces and surround sound and belief systems, you can use the belief systems to create your entertainment environment. You can use the surround sound to build what your visual fields believe these sounds to look like, and you can then use the neural interfaces to tell the computer where you are in the game so that they can keep you aligned and they can let you be entertained using only your mind.
Okay. And are there any thinkers, poets, or engineers you believe are working like in the same kind of realm as you are in this
Well,
conscious?
Douglas Adams sure was, but
Yeah.
he's a little gone right now. But I met him in Seattle at a book signing, and I got to ask him my one burning question. And you can ask someone a really good question. If they've never been asked something, they'll take an enormous amount of time to process it. And I asked him my one burning question. His book, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, had a book signing at the University of Washington book store. And I went there to get a book signed because Jeffrey David Alden, the All-American boy who was my roommate at Washington State University, I was there from 1982 to 1983, and they did not have the Americans with Disabilities Act back then like they do now. I was born XXY with Klinefelter syndrome. I have attention deficiency disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder and diabetes. And I was 400 and some odd pounds, and I couldn't make the hills. And so Washington State University did what any university that didn't have the Americans with Disabilities Act. They said, goodbye.
Huh.
So I spent a year at WSU and then I left. But Jeff was getting married, and I went and got a book signed for him from Douglas Adams. And I got to ask him one question. I said, if you had a piece of software for your computer, because Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency was dedicated to his Apple Macintosh.
Okay.
And so I said, if you could have your computer do anything you wanted to do, what type of piece of software would you want? And Douglas Adams stood 6'6", I believe. And he went from looking at me to looking up, and I found myself looking at Adam's apple, which was enormous. And it's like it had an audience, and it grabbed a hat and started doing a little dance in front of me or something. And then his neck came down, the curtain came down, and he said, well, if I could have anything I want in a piece of software, I want a word processor with a database so I can sort chapters. I assumed, having read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that he was already doing that. I couldn't imagine he was keeping all this stuff in his mind.
Huh.
And then I found this puzzle in the Gospel of Matthew and discovered the 2 commandments and 8 rules of Abraham, and discovered how to time slice the past from the future in the now to maximize decision making in the now, and learned how he was able to keep all this stuff in his head. And went, oh, well, that's interesting. The ultimate answer, the ultimate question, the life, the universe, and everything really is 42. It's the bottleneck between everything you're bringing in for data and what you're learning from that data. 2 towers of one design, one of another. 2 hit by planes, 1 not. All 3 fell down. How? Seismograph set to countdown timer set to explosives. Take 4 stopwatches. First plane hit, start 2. 1 to no distance between the first plane to hit and the second plane to hit. 1 to no distance between the first plane to hit and the first building to fall down. When the second plane hits, stop the one that goes from the first plane to be hit and the second plane to be hit, the tower to be hit. Stop that one and start a new one to not the second plane to be hit, the tower to be hit, and the second tower to fall. When the first building falls, stop 1 to no distance between the first building to fall, to be hit in the first building fall and start a new one to dump distance between the first building fall and the second building fall. And when the second building fall, stop the other two. And what you have is almost a perfect parallelogram, except the impact of the first tower set off the seismograph in the second tower, which is why it fell first.
Okay. So if you could write a new operating system for civilization, what would be its very first protocol?
First protocol is, let's see.
What? Do no harm?
I would have to say that any act of kindness, no matter how small, is never wasted. Is the first rule.
Okay, I like
Because
that.
that's what I've been using. Any
I
act
like
of kindness, you can't go wrong. Even if your heart's in the right place, if somebody else doesn't take it that way, but you didn't mean them any harm, it's still worth doing.
Okay, I
And
believe
then
that.
from there, take it down from there. But that one works consistently.
Okay.
I have been able to do volunteer work as an experimental hypnotist. Someone would come up with an idea or something that they need to get fixed, and I go, okay, here's how I would approach it with my scriptnosis standard, which scriptnosis is a conjunction of scripted hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a contractual FCC-compliant platform.
Mm-hmm.
To be FCC compliant, you have to disclose everything so that nothing is, trust me, I'm a hypnotist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't like that. I like educated guests who know what I'm going to ask them to do so that they're doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm just reading something to them. They read the whole script. They know what's coming. They're doing the work, and I am simply a narrator.
Exactly.
But by saying, okay, you're going to go from the earliest memory to the present, and you're going to go through every memory that you never want to remember. And you're going to create a garbage can for garbage thoughts and move this memory into here. And once you put it in there, it turns into dust. It's not that important. It was important out here, but in here, it's not that important. And as you do this, you're going to relieve yourself and feel freed from this burden that has been torturing you all this time. And this is going to make it easier for you to then go to the next memory that you never want to remember. And the next, and next, and next. Please raise your hand when you're done. And some people, it doesn't take that long, and some people it takes a long time, 15 or 20 minutes. But when they're done, the ability to have relieved themselves of these burden memories is worth every minute. The basic all-in-one takes care of all this stuff in one session, run once, and it's free. And
Okay.
it's posted in us.military, and you can find it by going to tinyurl, tinyurl.com/basic-all-in-1. And it works. It's the baseline I always use, because if you disclose to your guests everything you're going to do in advance, let them read it through and change it and have total control over the authorship of what they're going to have. And by giving them a book that has modules, if you want to experience this, write your module like that. They can add things to it or subtract things from it. And learn to do master level hypnosis the first time without having to be a master.
Gotcha.
And I've had a lot of hypnotists who are just pissed as hell at me. I'm going, look, if you educate your users, if you educate your guests,
It'll be a better session.
They will adapt to your sessions better because they're doing the work and they're responsible for it.
Exactly.
And if they won't sign the contract, they were going to fail because they chose to fail.
Yes.
And it's much easier to, if they won't sign the contract, saying, I won't run the session if you don't sign the contract. It puts everything on a conscious level and allows you to eliminate people who choose to eliminate themselves. So you're not doing it.
Do you have any closing advice for listeners trying to reclaim agency over their own internal programming?
Sure. You don't have to remember that yesterday or forever ever happened, but you are responsible with this avatar's actions in this dimension. And if your avatar goes somewhere and does something, it'll end up in jail or whatever, because you can't blame the hypnotism. The avatar is responsible. So
Okay.
that's why using a garbage can for garbage thoughts and going from the earliest memory to the present and taking out memories that you choose to never remember and creating garbage that you don't want to remember, while at the same time reliving the good stuff and adding things to reality that may not be truthful memories, but they help you cope with things that you otherwise can't cope with.
Okay.
You have total control over this system, and the best way to do it is to find someone you trust, give them a copy of the script that you want run, have them run it for you, find a dark room, bring a blanket with you, and find a comfortable chair or something. A session typically will run about 1 to 2 hours. You only have to run it once.
Okay.
And it's great.
Yeah. Well, you only had to run it one time, you said, and it could change your entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a wonderful thing to have.
But the thing is, I can't really charge for something that's a miracle. Miracles must be free.
True.
So I'm doing everything I can for the family of David, because King David adulterated with Bathsheba and scapegoated her husband who died. The Star of David or David's sins, and we've carried this cross for over 3,000 years. And if there's only 2 commandments and 8 rules and nothing is written, and the promised land of world peace, not Palestine, then anybody using the Torah as weaponry since 1833, have at it, baby. It's yours.
Oh man, David, I could sit here and have you on here forever, but
We've run well past.
oh yeah, and it was great information too for everybody that's been on here listening, watching. If anyone has any questions for him, right now is the time to ask. If not, then I will close out this podcast with saying that, you know, everyone here on the podcast knows, you know, how I operate and how I am, and it's the same way it looks like with, you know, David. You know, he is the embodiment of what everyone should try to be in what they are doing to try to change themselves. Okay. If you have something that is wrong with you, if you look in the mirror and you're like, oh man, a blemish, change it. Who says
Well, find someone you trust to run the session for you so you can change it.
Yes. Find someone that you trust, because if you're sitting there with someone you don't trust, you're not going to open up. You're not going to
You're not going to relax. Yeah. And I've had a couple of people that said they had people run hypnosis sessions with them, and the hypnotist did horrible things to them. And they, like, one guy was petting a dog, and the hair came off and the skin came off, and the dog died, and the person was traumatized with hypnosis. And I said, we'll do a session, and the first thing we'll take care of that. And I had him run his hand backwards, and the dog came back and jumped out of his arms and barked and ran away.
Yeah.
And that worked for him.
Yeah.
And if you take care of the individual and build out their abilities to process logic, computers will work very well with hypnosis. They're basically the same system, but you need to adapt to the guest's understanding.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you so much for this wonderful time to have fun. And
I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun because, and I think I learned a lot too. I'm going to actually be reading that toolkit because I want to see if I could change a couple things about that couple memories I have, and maybe unlock some that I didn't remember. You know,
with Vietnam, he had me hypnotized, and in the session, he was getting on the plane to go to Vietnam. And the next memory he had was he was getting off the plane coming home from Vietnam. The entire session of the war, he chose to not remember. He put it in the garbage can for garbage thoughts. And filed it away and never had a problem with it after that, because that was his way of coping. And life is a personal experience, not a shared experience.
Okay.
You may be in a room with 100 other people, but each person is an individual and each needs their own way of doing it. So I developed tools for parents to teach their kids and for programmers to write and sell software for the mind, so we have new commerce and industry and jobs. I don't have a problem with making America great, but I never thought we were ever anything but great. I never thought that we'd ever dipped lower. So I'm not doing it again. We've always been great. Donald Trump's crap.
Got a question.
He violated oath of office, and I do not support him.
Got a question here from one of the guests, Jerry Barker. In the Bible, it says that Jesus spoke convincingly. Would that suggest he could use hypnosis techniques against people?
Not necessarily. Well, the thing is, what I learned from hypnosis, if a person rejects it, they would probably never talk to him again and never listen to him again. The way the mind works to protect itself with just standard thoughts.
It bottles it up. It's almost like PTSD of a traumatic incident. It tries to lock it away.
You lock it away. And
okay.
I could see you'd have a much better time throwing a grenade in a distance and causing shock or overload or deception to trigger an unconscionable subconscious state, which you then would make suggestions to people. I've seen that happen a lot.
It's almost like having a split personality, and you have one that you can suggest something to, and then when the other takes over, it's something different.
I've dealt with that too.
We'll have to get into that in a little bit, because we're running around 2:15.
Okay.
If anybody has any more questions, let me know, and I will definitely get them to David. And David, it was a real pleasure to have you on here, man. If you ever want to come back, and I'll give you the floor. You can talk about whatever topics you want to. You're more than welcome to get a hold of me, and I'll have you back on immediately.
Rodney Dangerfield told me I get one chance to be new. He said, you got to wait for your audience, polish your skills, bring work ready to go, and never lose sight of your dreams.
Yes.
And Donald Trump saying I must be either X, Y, or XX. I see my dreams have been thwarted by the president, and I have to fight back. So I'm dumping these tools so that they're open source, public domain, for hypnosis and remote viewing and space-time analysis, so everyone gets the upgrade and no one's left behind.
You heard it here, everyone. Thank you, David. Have a great day, and I will talk to you. I'll talk to you in a little bit, probably.
Okay.
Let me see here. All right, Galactic family. We are going to call it a night tonight. That was wonderful. Next week, I will be actually doing a pre-record. I'm being asked to co-host. Let me put that right. Co-host and be on another podcast on Wednesday to pre-record. I think it's coming out in June or July. I'm sorry. It is Glenda Dawson, non-denominational minister, Reiki grandmaster, regression therapist, therapeutic energy healing facilitator, inspirational international speaker, author, mystic, and co-author with Kevin Harrington. She's also a podcast producer. So she saw my podcast, and we have the same kind of feelings on the subject when it comes to peace and just understanding when it comes to people in general. Okay. I love it when I could sit there and have an honest conversation with someone and not have someone come at me and spike me. Just, no, we can sit here. We can debate all day long. It's okay with me. But the minute that it turns into something that's negative, it's like, that's all you really care about. That's all you think about is that negative side. That's why I stopped watching the news too, people. I watch it, but I don't watch it. I watch it to a point. My brain can only take so much negative stuff in one day. Okay. So when I turn on the news, I absorb what I need to, the information I need. And then I'm like, yep, that's enough. Because the more I absorb of negativity, the more I'm going to put out, the more I'm going to attract. And that's not what we're trying to do here, everyone. Peace, love, and understanding. That's it. If we can do that as a human species, the sky's the limit. It really is. Thank David for David for being here. I thank him, and it's been a wonderful podcast, everyone. Everyone have a good night, and I will see you guys most likely next week. We will be doing a live in the field investigation. We couldn't do it this weekend because of the fact of rain and here in Pennsylvania. So I'm going to try to get out on Friday or Saturday next week for a live on the scene investigation of Concrete City in Nanacoke, Pennsylvania. It's a haunted coal mining abandoned village. So we're going to go there, check it out with all the communication equipment I got here, and let's see what we can find. Galactic family, as always, have a great night. Spread love, peace, and understanding, everyone. We're all better for it. Have a good night, Galactic family.